Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm Jim Goddard. Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, I'm happy to be back on the show.
John, last week we heard tragic news from ATAC Resources. Could you please tell us what Discovery Watch learned about it?
It is a really sad story. On Tuesday, August 6th, a small airplane with one passenger making a routine flight from the Rakla airstrip to Mayo, it crashed with no survivors. It was a Cessna, which has about a dozen passenger seats, and it went down just north of Mayo Lake, not far from the Mayo airport. And the ironic thing is, when I was in the Yukon several weeks ago, our group participating in the Yukon Mining Alliance, we were flying in these planes all over the territory and all without incident. The pilot, Sean Kitchen, he had 4 years of flying experience. We do not know what the cause is for the crash. It is under investigation. But the part that really struck me personally is that the passenger was Julia Lane, who is the exploration VP for ATAC Resources. And it was just under a couple of weeks ago that our group was at the RAW camp listening to Julia explain to us all the plans for the shift back to the RAW portion of the Rakla Gold Belt. I mean, this is a 185-kilometer belt of rocks that the company has been exploring since 2009. And she had become what I call the vision keeper of the story. She started working for Archer Cathro back in 2009, and by 2010 she was managing the exploration program for the whole Rakla Belt. Originally it was all about the Tiger gold discovery in the Raw area, and then later on, by 2010, 2011, it shifted to the eastern part, what they call the Osiris area, where they found Carlin-type sediment-hosted gold mineralization. And in 2015, she became the exploration VP. And a vision keeper is somebody who completely loads the geology into their head, not just in 3 dimensions, but in 4 dimensions, which is time. In other words, they see how the whole geology evolved over time. They know how to map the vision to all the underlying data. Anytime there's new information, they're the first ones to assimilate it and tell everybody else what's going on. Every technical team needs to have a person like that. She was a geoscientist, and she was only 33 years old. So it is a tragedy that an accident on a routine flight took her down. And it is a substantial loss, not just for an individual whose career with enormous potential has been cut short, but it's also a loss for the for women. The mining and exploration sector does not have a lot of women like Julia Lane in it, and to have somebody like this so young and so promising snuffed out, that is a big setback. It's of course a setback for ATAC Resources, which now has to find a new vision keeper. I understand that Rob Karn is going to step back in and take charge of the exploration program, where right now it's all about the Bobcat zone where a drill program is underway, and Julia was leading that. It's the other ironic thing is this was just a relatively short flight, and the company has since 2016 been pushing to have a tote road go from Kino City up to the main airstrip up there, so that you can drive the 65-kilometer. It has conditional approval. It has they hope to have a formal decision sometime early next year. If they end up building this road, they originally wanted to call it the Tiger Tote Road, but I'm thinking they should call it the Julia Lane Road, in recognition of her vision that this part of the northern frontier of Yukon has the potential to deliver world-class deposits, of which the Yukon is surprisingly lacking, not because I don't think it has the geological potential for it, but because there simply hasn't been enough exploration done to really tap the potential of the Yukon. There is a group that would like to turn the entire territory into a national park, which means that it's basically empty during the long months of a frozen winter whiteout. Julia was part of the group that wanted to see mining become the year-round economic base for the territory, so that the 40,000 people don't need to shrink to a smaller number when they're during winter. So I would suggest if they ever get this road approved, it will open up this area, and it would be great if it became known as the Julia Lane Road, in recognition of the important role she played in the last decade pushing the exploration vision for the Raklapa Gold Belt.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, back in June, you devoted the show to 3 resource juniors that you own that ended up in the dumpster trading below a nickel. You were especially gloomy about the future of Yerevan Resources, whose chief was trying to sell the company as a shell. The stock was halted on July 18th. What does the future hold for Yerevan?
Well, Jim, I may have been overly pessimistic. Just as a reminder, Yerevan was my favorite uranium exploration junior because it had developed an exploration method, an innovative use of radiogenic lead isotopes to look for uranium deposits in the Athabasca Basin that were considerably deeper than it was feasible to look for with geophysical methods that seek conductors, and then you kind of have to do a poke and hope approach. The work was funded by Cameco, but when they had to put McArthur River on care and maintenance because of low uranium prices, it was actually cheaper for them to keep the uranium in the ground and buy it in the spot market and fulfill their long-term contracts that way. It became pointless to look for even deeper versions of McArthur River, the biggest, richest uranium deposit in the world. And that kind of ripped the rug out from underneath Yerevan, and Larry Lahusen, the CEO, has been trying to sell it as a shell. But because the stock exchange is full of zombie companies, it can be reorganized and peddled off as a shell, basically hand the keys to somebody else for nothing. And the brokerage sector is already back at work shoveling at least a half dozen new capital pool shells onto the market every month. I sort of thought, well, this looks like a hopeless situation. However, when they halted it on July 18th, the news release it was somewhat sparse. It came out a week later explaining greater detail. The company is acquiring a California-based company called Scientific Wellness Corporation. It is somehow involved with medical and recreational cannabis. They use the quaint term adult use in their press release. Both uses are legal now in California, but it is not yet legal at the federal level. So the whole cannabis story that has been such a big boom in Canada, where it was legalized for even recreational use last October, this is still a frontier for the whole cannabis market, a frontier that has 10 times as many people as the United States. Now, they're doing a 10-for-1 rollback, so yeah, we get the kind of haircut, but it could have been worse. I've seen 40 for 100 for one rollbacks when they wipe out a shell. That means the existing shareholders get to keep about 4 million shares, of which Larry Lahusen has 1 million shares. He'll stay on the board of the company, provide some continuity, which also means that he can't just blow his stock out as soon as it goes public. So that leaves a public float of 3 million. Contrary to a trend where bucket loads of paper have been manufactured for the flimsiest cannabis ideas, here they're only issuing 8.5 million post-rollback shares. And interestingly, they're doing a financing at 40 cents U.S., apparently around $2 million. So if it stays that would be an extra 5 million shares. At that price, I'm actually up about 50% because when it was, before it was halted, it was down at 3 cents. So post rollback, it's about 5 cents Canadian. So I'm already feeling happier than I was before. But with less than 20 million shares outstanding and a group that I don't think is Canadian based, I think it's an American group, I think they will likely bypass the whole Bay Street audience, which right now the Canadian cannabis bubble has peaked. It's in the deflating distribution mode. They're not going to be a big source of capital. The idea that the Canadian cannabis companies will be a staging ground for moving into the United States, and that they can get away with racking up huge losses and call it market development costs, just like during the dot-com days, well, that's running head-on into the ability of Americans to invent their own cannabis deals from scratch, and Scientific Wellness appears to be in this category. The company is going to delist from the TSX Venture and relist on the Canadian Stock Exchange, not because they can get the deal terms approved more easily there, which is a common reason to give up on the TSX Venture, but rather because the TSX has a ban on its listings acquiring U.S.-based businesses that are involved in cannabis because of the legality questions, whereas the CSE has not created a rule for itself. So this is not one of these things where you go from a bigger exchange to a smaller one to get a deal done that can't be approved in the other one. It's more a technical dealing with this restriction. So my hope is this all comes together. It's going to be probably late November if it gets done. There's always a chance that some roadblock shows up and it doesn't happen. But I'm actually optimistic that not only might I get my money back, which would be about 4 or 5 times what it went off at, but if they turn this into one of those U.S. deals where the tight structure and attracting U.S. money and with big winner-take-all type strategy, this could end up being a winner that makes me more money than I ever dreamed of through hoping to find another MacArthur River through their radiogenic lead isotope exploration strategy.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Aven Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aven's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avenresources.com.
Cyprus Development Corp is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cyprus Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cyprusdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, Sun Metals put out initial results for its Stardust copper gold project. Do they know yet what's going on at the 421 zone?
Well, the Sun Metals management may know what's going on, but the market is mumbling and has no idea. On July 23rd, they put out a peculiar news release, I think partly because they had promised to have something out before the end of the month, saying that they had drilled 3 holes, 2 of them on the 421 section, and and another one 50 meters to the south, but there was no description of what it had intersected, and certainly no grades. Well, on August 13th, we got the grades for those holes, and the holes confirm, yes, this is a great system with a high-grade copper and gold, and the step out 50 meters to the south also delivered a long intersection of two of them, in fact, and the longest being 107 meters of 1.64% copper and 1.77 gram gold, almost an ounce of silver. And they had a conference call later that morning, and this was a bit of a mess up. The news release on Stockwatch had two of the numbers for the Canadian toll-free number mixed up, and so a lot of people weren't on the call that should have been called. And what's interesting is the news release itself was very sparse in describing what they think is going on. We had heard back in late July that they had already drilled 11 holes. This news release said that they were busy drilling 12 and 13. But if you go and listen to the conference call, which is available, you just go to their website, get the number, and listen to it, what becomes apparent is additional information that's not in the news release, namely that they are thinking that they need to vector to the north. Now, if you recall, they did downhole EM borehole survey earlier this year, which suggested the zone projected about 150 meters to the south. And this first step out was intended to confirm this. And without describing what they have done, they've got an extremely tight lid on all information flowing out of this. Steve Robertson basically said that based on the changing ratio of gold to copper, which is actually increasing to the south, they think that they need to vector move more towards the north, towards the hotter part of the system. And what they're saying now is this is a completely different zone than the Canyon Creek zone above, which is these lenses hosted within this phyllite, limestone lenses within a phyllite rock. The skarns are hosted within a massive limestone block that appears to be have been folded prior to mineralization. They see evidence of multiple phases of mineralization coming through, which is always what you want to see because it is this process of fluids bringing in metals, depositing them, more fluids coming in, remobilizing the fluids, redepositing them. This is what creates the concentration effect. But listening to the conference call left me mumbling. There weren't too many questions asked. Only about 3 or 4 analysts asked them, and they were very technical questions about mineralogy. Nobody actually asked, well, these other 8 holes that you've already drilled, where are they? How far south of the original hole 18 section did you step before realizing that maybe this is the wrong direction to go? And another puzzling thing is the geophysics had not suggested anything promising to the north, and yet now the message is they're marching to the north. So there's a lot of questions out there. Where are these other holes spotted? What did they come up with? And hole 12 and 13, which are underway, they have 2 rigs on the property. Where are those located? Are they located to the north, off to the side? What internally are they understanding about the geometry of this system? And Steve Robertson indicated, well, we're about halfway through the program, so, we're talking about another dozen holes to be done before the weather causes you to wrap up in sort of late October, unless they choose to do a winterized camp. The grades are still good. You still see lots of buying coming in to absorb all the selling. Some of that selling may be warrant holders clipping it and thinking, oh, geez, what if they drill, and it turns out it's just a tiny pod and the stock dies. So there's a lot of pessimists out there likely exercising warrants and selling the stock. And yet there is strong buying that always comes in around the 50-cent mark, sometimes up to 55. Sometimes, they wait until it drops below 50. So it is a very intriguing situation, very well followed by the market, but there is a lot of uncertainty right now as to whether they internally have this thing nailed and are going to gradually unveil the good news that we have a major discovery on hand, or that they've lost the zone, the grade fades out, and they don't know exactly where to go to. And the nightmare from last year was they kept a long radio silence about progress, and the reason became obvious was because they were hitting nothing all year. Hole 421, that was delivered late in the season, and it basically bailed them out. And it was a deeper hole than anything else, and it found an entirely new zone with a different style of mineralization and substantially better width than anything that had ever been intersected on this project. So the Stardust is still alive. The body language of management suggests that they still believe they're onto something big. Their words can leave us only guessing, and I have my fingers crossed that over the next 6 weeks we are going to see something important. I have heard that an analyst tour is planned for the end of August. It's sort of a rule that you don't waste analysts' time taking them up to a project that's already a dud. That happened to us once back in 2001, when a whole group of us traveled all the way to Brazil to look at a Rockwell's platinum palladium play, which they didn't even take us to the drill sites because they already knew the whole thing was a bust. I think this group, the Oxygen group, is not going to make that mistake. I think what they can see in the core, what they're coming up with, they just never know what the grade's going to be. I have a suspicion this is starting to take shape, but they're going to wait for assays to reveal to us what they see unfolding before their eyes. So we have to just sit tight and wait this out.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.